I'm looking good.
Over the years, the Need for Speed franchise has been getting success after success with their previous games, notably Hot Pursuit and High Stakes, and I don't need to tell you why. The gameplay of these games speaks for themselves. They know who they are, they're pretty good. But back in 2002, Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2 was released with strong positive reception, both critically and commercially, and many people back then called Hot Pursuit 2 the peak of the franchise. But Black Box had to make something new for their next installment. How are you gonna outclass Hot Pursuit 2? What innovations did they have to make for their next game? That would be impossible, right? You can't outpeak the peak, right? Well, wrong. To understand how Black Box created their next installment of the franchise, we need to put some context about the import tuning as a whole. The import tuner's culture was having its domain expansion back in the late 90s and early 2000s, and many kids, including me, around the era, were amazed by the prospect of the ability to see cars modified and tuned to perfection. It was magic and a force to be reckoned with. That being said, car tuning wasn't invented in the 90s, but it started around the 60s in America with the advent of hot rods and muscle cars, as well as drag racing. However, the tuning import culture itself gathered a lot of traction when more and more Japanese cars like the Supras, Skyline, Civics, just to name a few, were available for the world market, and tuning parts became more affordable in the late 90s. But that was only the beginning. Around the early 2000s, a movie called Fast and the Furious made its debut in June 2001, and despite its mixed reception, it moved the import tuning culture forward as a whole in terms of popularity by showing it for a much wider audience. I myself remember watching this movie as a kid, and that was a long time ago. It was a fun movie with tons of fun action sprayed around the movie. However, that wasn't what made the movie famous for it. Me and many others were shocked and awed with how modified the vehicles were, especially the Eclipse. That Eclipse looked fire. And I learned about these JDM cars because of this movie, but also the game that we're going to review. A lot of people were dreaming for a racing game that would have street racing with JDM cars, tuning, ability of customizing your car to a freaking T, drag and drift events, anything that would please the import tuning fanbase. Sure, there were some JDM cars-based racing games like Tokyo Extreme Racer for the Dreamcast, but it was for a very niche audience back then. And sure enough, Black Box finally made their dreams come true in 2003 with their next game that would shape an entire new generation of Need for Speed fans, Need for Speed Underground. Need for Speed Underground was released in 2003 for the PlayStation 2, Xbox, GameCube, and PC. This time around, all ports were entirely developed by Black Box. EI Seattle, who made the PC version of Hot Pursuit 2, was sent to the Shadow Realm, unfortunately. As for the memories of this game, I had fun times playing on the PC, but sadly my copy of the game was destroyed. But I had the PS2 version around 2006, and while Underground 2 and Most Wanted were available, I still had fun with it nonetheless. But has Need for Speed Underground aged like a fine wine, or has it aged like oil milk? Let's find out, shall we? For the first time ever, Underground features a story, and while it's simple compared to its sequels, it gets the job done, I suppose. The player starts with a tune on the Integra Type R, and you'll be able to sweep your opponent. But it turns out in reality, you're just daydreaming, and your friend Samantha teaches you how the races work, who are the drivers of the Underground Championship, and she allows us to choose our first car of our choice, ranging from the Golf, Peugeot 206, Honda Civic, MX-5, and the Neon. Samantha will mock us saying,
"Ouch, that is seriously weak, dude."
Are you sure about that?
Once you pick your car, it is revealed that this guy Eddie is the leader of a racing crew named the East Siders, and he is the best racer in the Olympic City. Your objective in Underground mode is basically to become the very best like no one ever was. But you need to do some hard working in order to earn that title. So what do you do in this mode? Well, Underground mode has like 111 events, which it might be daunting at first, seeing that Black Box is kinda notorious for having bloated career modes. But to the game's credit, the events don't last that long, and you don't just do racing, as there are different things you can do. Now sure, compared to other career modes from its sequels like Underground 2, Most Wanted, and Carbon, Underground 1's career mode feels very simplistic and sometimes repetitive in some parts, but it gets the job done. In each event, you pick your difficulty skill, with easy granting you the least amount of cash you earn, while in hard you get bigger rewards and your opponents are even quote-unquote stronger. I said that in quotations because they are pretty sneaky bastards, but I'll get to that when we get to that. As you win events, you earn new visual parts of your car, new performance upgrades, and even new cars along the way. Speaking of visual and performance upgrades, this is where Need for Speed series turned into a menacing machine, shifting into overdrive that we know today. The fact that, for the first time ever, we could customize our car by adding new bumpers, rear wings, new rims, so on and so forth, it was something that a man could dream of, but it was reality. Yeah, I know that High Stakes had customization for our cars, but that was total child's play compared to Underground. In Underground, you could add neon lights, paint your windows, adding headlights, tail lights for your car, adding decals and vinyls, you name it. It made you feel like a badass. It made you feel like a god. It made you feel like you could do anything. It made you feel like you created a Lovecraftian creature that would beat the shit out of everyone. Well, for the most part, but we will talk about it later. I mean, starting with the shitbox of a car and upgrade it to the max so that you could stand a chance against high tier cars was a delight and then some. You might be asking, what's the point of rising your shitbox of a car? Simple. See this bar? This is the visual rating bar of your own car. You increase this little bar by, you guessed it, by upgrading your car as much as you can, whether by adding different front and rear bumpers, rear wings, roof scoops, new hoods, adding neon lights, etc. This is pretty important since as you progress through the career mode, some events, most notably the tournament events to be more specific, require you to have at least enough reputation stars to enter. I know some people hate the idea of racing their cars, but again, not racing your shitty car would defeat the whole purpose of the game. And let's be honest, who doesn't like to customize their cars, huh? As for performance stuff, you can upgrade your engine, transmission, suspension, reduce the weight of a car, and, how can I forget, adding nitros on our car. For the first time ever, you could add nitros to our cars, giving a temporary boost to the car, not to mention that using it was rewarding, not just making all the opponents bite the dust, but the sound effect that it produces is just as iconic as it is amazing. In addition, there's also time trial events that, when completed within the time limit, can offer you bonus stuff, ranging to unique visual parts like rims, vinyls, performance parts, or even wide body kit parts. They're optional, but some of these parts are vital to your success. Like I mentioned before, you don't just do regular racing in the career mode. Yes, the traditional circuits, sprint, and knockout races have returned from Hot Pursuit 2, but in true import tuning fashion, we have two new kids on the block, drag racing and drifting mode. With drag racing, the mode is simple. You drive your car into a straight point-to-point route. This mode focuses entirely on RPM management and trying to shift gears in the most optimal moment and avoiding traffic, of course. If you shift gears in the right moment, you get a small boost. But if you shift gears when the pointer turns red or too soon, that means you'll get penalized in terms of acceleration, and things will get more hectic when upgrading the engine and transmission parts or acquiring the nitrous tanks, which will help you reach top speed with ease. But there is a twist in this mode. You need to keep an eye on this bar in the under left of the screen. This is your engine temperature. It will rise up if you don't shift gears, but that's not all. You will push your engine to its limits if you're reaching top speed, and some cars will not survive the drag races due to their gear system being different. But this is more apparent in the mid-game of the career mode or cars that have a shitty gearbox. Also, the steering mechanic is different in drag mode. If you try to move your car to the left or right, it will automatically change lanes rather than the player naturally move the car to left and right. I do like drag racing mode. For what it is, it's fun in its own right. It is very fun to see cars from the game reaching their top speed with ease. You'd love to see it. But drift mode is easily my favorite in the game. The objective is straightforward. It's about driving with finesse and style. And to win in these events, you need to have a higher score than your opponents, and getting points during drift events is very easy. The controls are different as your car is far more slippery, which is to be expected. You must maneuver your car properly and using your speeds to get big points during the drifts. But if you're brave and skilled enough, you can actually drift near the barriers to get big points. The longer the drift, the more points you get. But if you hit the barriers of a drift track, you lose your points that you made from that drift. So try not to hit them. As a kid, I really liked this mode as it was so addicting to play. Every day I tried to score the highest points possible, going even further beyond, and as an adult, I still to this day appreciate this mode. It's really a great change of pace when it comes to racing games.
Everyone stop talking, listen, like, that was the best thing I've ever seen in my freaking life.
And it's also an easy way to obtain style points. And what are style points exactly? Well, these are points that basically unlock new stuff, whether it being new vinyls and even bonus cars that you can use in quick race mode. And how do you get them? Well, by making near misses, power slides, doing clean sections in a track, shortcuts, or even completing a lap without crashing in traffic. But you also lose style points if you hit the traffic or hitting walls during the drift events. The controls and physics of Underground 1 are solid and responsive. In the PC version, it supports modern controllers, but it gets better when you install the extended input mod for the game. Sure, the physics are a bit floaty and very arcadey, but it's not meant to be a simulator. The car's handling felt more grippy than in Hot Pursuit 2, as the game controls were more of a hybrid of simulation and arcade. But that's not to say that the controls in this game are bad, they're very different. When it comes to the car roster, it's different compared to the other previous games from the franchise. Gone were the days of having rare and exotic cars at your disposal. In Underground, there are normal everyday cars available to you: the Volkswagen Golf, Peugeot 206, Dodge Neon, Honda Civic, and the Mazda Miata. While I never seen the Dodge Neon in my life, I sure as hell saw the other cars a lot in real life, which was very cool. Not to mention the fact you can upgrade them to the max was impressive, and seeing them outmatch the other high tier cars of the game was a sight to behold. With that being said, the roster isn't limited to shitboxes you see in real life every day. Did we forget that this game also has a lot of JDM cars as well? We have the iconic Skyline GTR, the Rotary Warrior known as the RX-7, the Great Eclipse, the Supra, the Celica 350Z, the Honda Integra Type R or Acura if you live in the US region, the RSX, and the Lancer and Impreza are also there. Wait, hold up, what the heck is this Lancer? This doesn't look like a Lancer that I saw in Red Dead 3, they had a real Lancer, the Lancer Evo 7. Well, you see, this is not the Lancer Evo that we all know. It's actually the ES version, which is a much more underpowered version of the Evo version, clocking at a 118 HP and a much inferior top speed. When I played it as a kid, I was really happy that they had a Lancer, and I wasn't aware that other variants of the Lancer exist. But now looking back, this Lancer fucking sucks. It's a Lancer that you've ordered from Tino, and that's saying something. The same can be said to the Impreza. Instead of being the WRX STI version, it's actually based upon the 2.5 RS version, and it has an abysmal 165 HP. Yeah, that really sucks. It's a shame that they didn't use the Evo 7 and the WRX STI version of the bug eye Impreza. I'm honestly glad that Underground 2 had the much more superior version of these cars, so fuck the shitty version of the Lancer Impreza, these can go to the trash. Do the cars function the same? Nope, not even close. A lot of these cars have front wheel drivetrains, which if you play Gran Turismo, you know that front wheel cars tend to understeer a lot, as some JDM cars have rear wheel drivetrains, meaning they tend to oversteer a lot. Some of them have their own good qualities, whether being good acceleration, top speed, or handling, but some of them also have their own disadvantages. Some of them suck at taking clean corners, and others are really slow. If you ask me what my favorites from the roster are, I'll say my favorites are the Eclipse, RX-7, on the Integra Type R, RSX, and the Miata. Every time I start a new game as a kid, I always pick the MX-5. It's great at taking corners and an expert in drift events. Not to mention you can solo the entire career mode if you're brave and skilled enough to tackle all the events in this game. That's not to say that the other stars are bad. I tried it on the Civic and it wasn't too shabby with its precious VTEC power, but others like the Golf and 206 are okay, but they will be outclassed by other mid to high tier cars and later events. As for Olympic City itself, it looks gorgeous in terms of design. Yes, we no longer were driving around exotic locations like mountains, snowy mountains, etc., but driving around Olympic City was pretty fun. The fictional city itself has 5 districts: Inner City, Market District, Chinatown, Port Royal, and Airport. Now, a lot of these tracks take place in most of these districts, and some of them had districts interconnected with each other, which is pretty cool. The layout of the tracks in Underground are pretty well designed. some of them having branching paths that will make you choose which is the best way to keep the lead, and they have a lot of great set pieces, like jumping around these ramps never feels old, and going top speed on the highways of Olympic City feels so great. Since I've touched upon the cars and tracks, I may as well talk about the AI and the difficulty of this game. The AI in Underground 1 is sure as something. They often hit the traffic like drunken idiots, and oftentimes they don't take corners very well. But they do have one nasty trick on their sleeves, and that is rubber band AI. Ah yes, the biggest bane of existence of many racing games fans like myself. Now you may be asking, how bad is the rubber banding in this game? Well, I'm glad that you've asked, and honestly the rubber band wasn't as bad as people made out to be. Okay, I'm not going to lie, there were a few hiccups, mostly on the drag events. Even when I was doing my best, sometimes the AI was a cheating bastard. And granted, the majority of the career isn't that hard, but the traffic also plays a role when it comes to ruining the experience of the player. If you crash into traffic, you might as well restart the race, but to be fair, that is mostly the player's fault for not keeping the eyes on the road. I recently played this on hard and my experience wasn't that bad. The experience of 4,000 years of driving skills helped me, I assume. Probably my MX-5 helped me a lot, I don't know. But what about the event 95, Kurt Killer Ride? I'm gonna be honest, I've beaten this event in one try, with my Honda Integra Type R. In my recent playthrough, and maybe Kurt was scared of the power of VTEC that was inside of my Integra, but yeah, this event was a cakewalk. Yes, the AI was doing some rubber banding, but I didn't see anything peculiar with the opponents, so maybe I was the lucky one? But I've heard immense horror stories about people experiencing Event 95 to the point that even YouTubers spent 6 hours to beat the event. I don't know, either you guys must be unlucky or you must have some skill issue with the game. I don't know, I can't say. But the event that really was tough as nails was the Event 103, Enduro Street Circuit. And people say that Event 95 was hard as fuck? Bruh, they haven't seen anything yet.
Peter, what are you doing?
Event 103.
What the fuck?
The AI in this event is a cheating bastard of the highest caliber, and I'm aware that Black Box Team for Speed games were infamous for their rubber band AI, but this was on a whole new level. You need to have your driving skills on point, but even that is not enough, because if you make any mistakes, whether being small or huge, you will absolutely have no chance to get your lead back. Even if you waste all your nitros just to get the top speed of your car, they will find ways to fuck you. It doesn't help the fact that this event is 7 laps, which I know Event 95 was like 6 laps, but the fact that AI is a bigger bastard than the AI from that event is ludicrous. I myself had tasted the worst of Underground's AI in this specific event. And you know how people try to beat this event? By downgrading the performance of their cars.
Excuse me, what?
Like, what kind of backwards decision is that? Like, I get it, make it a long race event, there's nothing wrong with that, lots of racing games do that, but if someone must downgrade their cars, maybe, just maybe, winning the race with ease, you know it's fucking bad game design. The AI cars will match your car's top speed, meaning that if your car is very fast, they will abuse that and they will clap your cheeks with the most brutal tools they have at their disposal. And you know what's funny? This event took me 5 to 6 tries to beat it, and I didn't even downgrade, which is a coward's way out, by the way.
We call you normies.
And in my car, which was the Integra, my strategy was never to drive badly. Take corners with finesse, learn the best racing line, and you better enable that damn rear view mirror in this game, because without it, you'll be screwed. The worst part is that the rest of the career isn't that hard. The final race with Eddie was a joke, as well as the other events after 103. Like, he has a Skyline R34, and you'd think that being the leader of the East Riders would give you at least a decent challenge. But nope, he's a joke, he barely rubber bands. But hey, at least he is not as awful as someone from this franchise that it shall not be named. But wait, there's more. After beating Eddie, you become the best driver of Olympic City. But hold on, who is this 350Z? It wants to battle you. Yep, looks like Eddie isn't the final boss. This is, and again, not that hard if you drive well, and as soon as you defeat the 350Z, it is revealed that the driver was Eddie's girlfriend, Melissa, and the game ends. And after that is done, everything is unlocked, which is nice, but once you complete Underground mode, you're pretty much done with the game. There's Quick Race, where you can do all the things you did in career mode, but that's pretty much it. And I know there's also online mode, but the servers were shut down, so it is what it is. Underground 1 looks very cool by 2003 standards. It is very optimized in terms of frame rates, and on my Linux machine, which runs Kubuntu, works like a charm using Lutris, which can help you run these Windows games on your Linux PC. The car models are very detailed for a Need for Speed game, with the reflections looking amazing, and that is even more impressive considering that the cars also had reflections on the consoles with some performance penalties here and there, since the PS2 version that I had as a kid ran at 25 FPS with some frame drops when heavy stuff occurred, while I heard that the Xbox version, regardless if it was PAL or NTSC versions, ran at a very stable frame rate. And yes, I'm aware that you can emulate the PS2 version using PCX2, but honestly, why would you do that when the PC version exists, and not to mention that with some quality of life mods, it sweeps the PS2 version with finesse and style. In addition to that, as I mentioned before, the City of Underground 1 looks very phenomenal for the time when it was released and is also applicable to the graphics of the city itself. The textures are decent, and the lightning effects from both the city and the cars as well are well made. And of course, you cannot forget the soundtrack as well. The soundtrack of Underground 1 is easily one of my favorites of the franchise, with heavy bangers like Get Low from Lil Jon and Eastside Boys, Born Too Slow from Crystal Method, Kimosabe from BT, and many others I could mention, but we would be forever talking about them. Point being, the soundtrack was one of the key elements that made Underground the way it was, among other things that I mentioned as well, and to this day I still listen to the soundtrack when I'm on the computer playing other racing games or just doing nothing.
No, not you.
Lost profits.
What about the sound effects? They're just as awesome as the soundtrack, with the engine sounds of every car look very menacing when fully upgraded to their maximum potential, and the nitrous sound effect is easily the best sound effect in the history of racing games. Every time I use it, man, you'll bet that I really love the sound effect. Every time I hear it, my car will shift to overdrive. You'd love to see it. And that is Need for Speed Underground. Does it still hold up? Well, there is a lot to like about Underground, whether being the amount of tuning you can do to a car, the car roster, the soundtrack, the city itself, the driving mechanics, and the new modes that are addicting, especially with the drifting mode. But however, good as these qualities are, Underground didn't age well with the passage of time, and why, you may ask? Simple, the fact that Underground 2, Most Wanted, Carbon, and even Unbound are infinitely better than Underground 1. Sure, it did innovate a lot, but by the time Underground 2 was released, it was outclassed simply because Underground 2 had tons of improvements, whether it being the addition of free roaming, new modes, the AI being better and not being a cheating bitch, new visual upgrades, so on and so forth. It's pretty similar to how Burnout 1 was. It was a decent game in its own right, but once Burnout 2 and 3 were released, Burnout 1 felt dated, not a bad game by any means, just dated compared to its sequels. And that is Underground in a nutshell. It was innovative for a time, a game that moved the franchise to a new direction, and it's not a terrible game at all, but shafted away when its sequels arrived, as well as other imitators like Midnight Club 3 and Juice It. But let's not kid ourselves, EA and Black Box took huge risks for this game. I mean, they had to make something fresh and original, and chasing the import tuning culture trend was risky, but it was worth it when the game was critically and commercially successful, with the PS2 version receiving the Platinum release in the PAL regions, which I have it by the way. And sure, it drove the old fans off who really love the exotic parts of the old Need for Speed games, whether it being the cars or the tracks, but it also attracted a lot of newcomers to the franchise, as well as JDM fanatics, and had not Underground been made, I'm pretty sure the franchise would be in a different route. So, should you get Underground 1? Well, personally, kind of. It's a fun game in its own merits, but with how bad the AI is with rubber banding, especially in late game, and also the career mode is kind of bland, it got the formula done right, but execution wise is jankier compared to other games. I think if you want to play it for historical reasons, then do it as it's one of the most important games in the franchise. But just you know that I recommend newcomers to start with Underground 2 or Most Wanted, as these two offer more content and value than Underground. So ultimately, Underground may have aged like milk, especially with other competitors of the racing genre arrive, but it had its place as being one of the most important games that shaped the franchise to a new generation.